Pecha Kucha 222 20-hour Akuma Part 1. Part 1 because I'm about 11 hours in, so that means I'm going to have to double up for next week. So what's the premise? The premise is work on one image and keep working on it and see where it ends up. So I ran through a lot of different ideas and I just thought, let's just draw a picture of Akuma because I like Street Fighter and I like Akuma and I think he's cool. And I see a lot of cool images for reference as well. So the first thing I did was come up with some thumbnail sketches and just try and figure out, what I want to commit 20 hours to. So I spent a couple hours on this, doing kind of rough thumbnail sketches, picking some of the ones I thought were the strongest and then trying to adapt them to see if I could come up with something that would tick enough of the boxes for me to improve while doing it, but it not be too much work. I've always been a sucker for like this idea in my head of Akuma just laying the dirty smackdown on someone with this forward medium punch. If you don't use Akuma, I can't help you. It's like a karate chop, vertical karate chop. I probably should have done that. And, all the time I'm kind of concerned about the composition of the image. I decided it was just going to be like my atypical thing. A4. Because sometimes messing around with canvas size causes problems I don't want to have when it comes to uploading these images somewhere. Ultimately, I decided I was going to have Akuma charging a fireball because that's pretty iconic. It was one of the better thumbnails I conceived. It also gave me the option to figure out like special effects lighting and stuff with how overbearing to make the fireball. So it gives me both anatomy challenges, compositional challenges, and then actual finishing rendering special effects challenges. As I was kind of detailing the image and trying to build up accurate anatomy and position this kind of energy ring around him, I was finding this to be most troublesome. It always felt like it was off kilter, and I spent a fair amount of time, more than I'd cared to admit, trying to figure out how to draw Akuma's arm, and ultimately it's still a mess, but it looks a lot more like an anatomically correct mess. I spent a little bit of time on Pinterest looking at other people's muscle studies. It did help a lot. I really got to figure that shit out from the ground up. I did a few... all of this is iterative, so I was doing redrawings and the face was the easiest bit, the head. Every time I draw Akuma's head, I think it gets stronger. It was pretty strong to begin with. As I was getting to the point, something like 4 or 5 hours in, as crazy as that is, where I'm doing the final line work just with chalk brush with the intention of kind of airbrushing over and under this stuff, smudging it all out. I feel like stuff's starting to get tight. I'm starting to find myself in a position where I can stop being disturbed by how little I've achieved in the massive amount of time allotted. This is a foot. I don't draw those, but I think this is a pretty good foot, so I'm now officially a better artist than Rob Liefeld. Thank you. Your applause is too kind. But so about 4 or 5 hours in, I'm sitting there with a picture of Akuma, which is probably the wrong angle, it's probably the wrong pose, and I'm like, is this really what I was hoping this would be? Not especially, but when I started actually committing to my 4th or 5th background, and it kind of started to all come together, I've got a place for Akuma to live. And there's enough lines now that it kind of looks like work went into it. I'm finding it much easier to breathe easy. I want there to be a little bit of storytelling. So the idea that he's standing in this kind of dilapidated temple with like some weapons, some broken weapons in the background. I was going to add like more stuff like Neo style skeleton samurai corpses and stuff, but I'm like, there's a limit to how much work I want to put into a background, because I actually did pick it arbitrarily, and this is kind of the image I was working from. I had an idea in my head that I was trying to render for a while, and it wasn't really working, and it's like, even though I'm spending 20 hours on this, it's still non-committal enough. I don't have to feel like even making the wrong choice is that big a deal. So I'm just like, let's just keep moving. So finally getting to a point where I feel like I've got strong enough line work, I can start the coloring process. I put down the flats, and on Akuma in the foreground, just using the image, the reference image as the base. I'm probably going to change most of these colors. So one of the things about this entire process is keeping everything separated enough that I can edit individual things, like the fireball, for example, which you'll have noticed has only just shown up, and suddenly Akuma looks a whole lot less stupid with his incomplete it's his right hand, but there's a lot of flipping of this image going on. And towards the end of this week, I started messing around with applying textures. So I've added some kind of grid fabric style thing to Akuma's gi. I don't know that it adds anything, but I know that I do want there to be more polish to this image than is typical. So I'm getting to the point now where I'm trying to get rid of the hard line work, replace it with soft airbrushed soft shapes, so it looks a lot more realistic. I'm trying to do it in a way where it doesn't headfuck me as well. So it's mostly about blurring out the line work and adding airbrush as appropriate. So at this point, the background needs a ton of work. Akuma's lighting needs to be addressed. I need to keep getting rid of any of the stuff that's just outlined. First by changing it to an appropriate color. Like his rope gauntlet things will be brown, and then it's about smoothing things out so it looks more realistic. And applying, lots of texture brush work into the background. I mean, I don't know how much of my time I'm going to spend next week looking for or making texture brushes. And then I think a lot of my time will be spent trying to create harmonious lighting for Akuma, his fireball, the background. I've given him glowing eyes. That doesn't mean these are the eyes he's going to have. All of it is iterative. It's building the ladder step by step so I can jump onto a higher ladder and keep making things better until... Because this is supposed to be 20 hours minimum. I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm already reaching a point where it's uncomfortable. It's taken me 11 hours to get to 3 hours worth of finished work. Usually it would take me 3 or 4 hours to get to this point. So this is very weird. But this is where I am now. We'll see where I am next week. That brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 2222, and I'll see you then.